Product Officer at HIVE Diversity. Welcome to Mom Salon. This is a series that is personal for me because I am in week 39 of pregnancy. So this is for all the YaYa working moms who are trying to figure it out, but mostly me. YaYa is a platform to connect high-achieving women to build their professional and personal lives together. Tess has been in it with me since day one as an advisor and a friend. We have worked together in the past. Tess, thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for asking me, Jackie.
Can you tell us, actually, before we get started, about your most recent role? What is HIVE Diversity and what are you doing with them?
Yeah, so I just joined HIVE Diversity about 2 weeks ago, so still a little brand new, but I am their Chief Product Officer, their first product hire, which is pretty exciting. And it is basically a gamified virtual recruiting platform that's meant for students and graduates, both recent and experienced, to help them showcase their authentic selves and get hired by employers who really want to hire next-gen talent. And it specifically allows these students and graduates to kind of promote who they are, talk about, the personalities, their backgrounds, and highlight any diversities that they have to really connect meaningfully with employers.
I love it. As a former teacher in Baltimore City, sometimes it can be difficult for my students to show off their many talents in a very traditional and often a resume that maybe prompts bias or other things. So this sounds super mission driven.
Definitely. It's definitely mission driven. And I'm really excited because there's just so many opportunities for growth. The team is amazing. The CEO and founder is just incredible. I love working for them already. And there's just all this exciting runway and things to do, which is just really, really cool. And yeah, I definitely, the mission resonates really deeply with me and something that I care about a lot. So I'm really excited to be there.
I'm just curious, how did being a mom come into how you approached your selecting this job? You are a very talented person. You could have gone many places. And I'm just curious, as you think about building a life and a career of impact, but that also supports your family, how did that play into your selection of HIVE Diversity?
Yeah, so I guess I've always, not always, but for a number of years, been really interested in this space. And it's sort of, if I had to describe it, well, let me back up a little bit. So I have an 11-year-old. I've been a mom for, I guess, almost 12 years, pregnant for that time before. And when I became a mom, none of my peers were moms or were even thinking about becoming parents. I was, kind of the only one that I knew. And it wasn't really what I had planned. And I had, in college, I knew I wanted to be in fashion. And I really was gunning for that career. I did all these internships. I interned at Vogue, interned at all these places and knew I wanted to do that. And then when I became pregnant and had a baby, that suddenly wasn't really an option for me anymore. It was just a really grueling industry. It was hard to get these jobs. It was also the recession. And so I had to, I was unemployed for a year while I really looked for new opportunities. And that kind of shut down this career that I thought I really, really wanted. And I didn't really have the vocabulary to really think about or explain what I was feeling. But what I know now was that I experienced this kind of bias around moms and, thinking that they can't do this work and that I really needed to be a young person who had unlimited time to be able to do these jobs. So that always stuck with me. And it really shaped kind of how I approached my job and my career going forward. When I was in graduate school, I just noticed that there were not a lot of women in my program, in my MBA program, and there were no other single moms. And, started to really examine the issue. And the administration said it was a pipeline issue, that women who were in their early 30s, just really, the time of their life, they were really focused on other things. And it was hard to balance a family. And I don't know if I can say this, but I kind of called bullshit on that because we know, we know that whenever people say it's a pipeline issue, it's really, the company or the organization hasn't created a space where those folks can see themselves in that environment. So they were really, they were lagging on the inclusion piece. And I spent quite a bit of time in graduate school trying to increase the number of women and like femme identifying people to be able to go to that program and really see themselves there. And that's just like, I've followed that track in a number of ways. Like every organization I've been a part of, it's been something I've cared about and worked towards. And so when this opportunity came around, and I found that I could actually like do this as part of my job, it just was like too good to be true. And I just, I had to jump on it because it was such a perfect marriage of, what I care about and like the things I'm good at, which, how can you say no?
How can other people watching, if their boss says, oh, it's a pipeline issue, what are some words or strategies we can give them so that they can advocate for women at their workplace? I'm just curious, since you've done it now for many years.
So one of the first things I ask for, and I learned this from colleagues, and I also learned this in school. I took a really great class at Berkeley called Equity Fluent Leadership by Kelly McElhaney, who's amazing. And I think I was in her first version of this class, and it was all about, like, how do you put equity at the forefront of all that you do as a leader? And there are real strategies. So, one of the things we learned and that I've also put into practice is, okay, so you say it's a pipeline issue, show me the pipeline. Show me the numbers, right? Like back it up, show me that data, because that's such a cop out. And often like what I have found is that when you ask for the numbers and you ask for the data, the organization or the administration gets really cagey, and they don't want to reveal it. And so then you need to like really push for it. And really also, this is another thing, especially in like a bigger organization, you really need an executive sponsor. You need somebody who's at that top level of leadership who can partner with you and really have those conversations with, if you have a head of HR, or sometimes the CEO needs to sign off, or, when I worked at a nonprofit, it was like, the head of the organization. But really having that executive sponsor, because otherwise I found like, you can just be spinning your wheels for a long time trying to get that information. And the institution you're at is like not ready to change. They want to talk a good game, but they're like really not willing to put in any effort or money in solving it.
You model, Tess, what a YaYa could be for others. Like to know people like you at the top who are advocating, who are sending the elevator back down to make room for others and bring them to the top. I'm just so excited. And I feel like fired up like right now. Like I'm like, how can I be more of an equity fluent leader myself? So another question is kind of what missteps have you seen companies or organizations make with regards to maybe trying to support working moms, not delivering, working parents in general too. Let's broaden this. But have you seen kind of common mistakes or trends?
Yeah. When I think about that, it makes me think of, so there's a difference between saying you have a policy and then actually enacting that policy and demonstrating that you as a leader are committed to that policy. And I'll give you an example. I worked in an organization where, the head of the organization was really great and definitely cared about working parents, but, would say things like, take the time you need or, set your own working hours, but would then get in touch with people at all hours. And because this person was the leader, it was really difficult to be able to establish those boundaries and to, know how to take care of myself as a mom, as someone with a family, while also feel like I was doing really good work. I was really worried about being penalized for being a mom because that happened to me for so much in my career. And it was just really hard and like a little traumatizing. So I think, when I've seen leaders take a different tack, like leaders who really model what they want to see in their employers or in their employees. So it's not enough to say, we have this policy. Like it's even better if you say, hey, vacations are really important. I'm taking a vacation. I'm taking this week vacation. I want everybody else to take a week vacation. Or family is really important. I'm shutting off every day at 6 p.m. because I have dinner with my family. You can't reach me on the weekends. If you need something that's urgent, send me a message with subject line urgent. But other than that, you can't reach me. And until that like modeling happens, I think it could be really difficult to trust that the leadership or head of the organization like really does believe in that policy.
you're teaching me and reminding me of best practices, because even I will like use Slack or another communication tool at all hours. And I think I've worked at a company where we've had leaders that have said, very clearly, don't Slack at all hours. And then remember, people are in all time zones as well. So I love that. I am a big believer in vacation. So I do think modeling that from the top, but I love that it really does have to come from C-level leadership in order to be more than a policy, for it to actually be culture.
Absolutely. And you're making me think, so I just started this new company. They are based in New York. I live in San Francisco. So there's a definite time zone issue. And I am often doing most of my work and like really catching up kind of like in the late afternoon, early evening, which is the evening, kids' bedtime for a lot of my colleagues. And, I made it clear, I created this whole like about me document that actually Chris Bennett suggested that I do, which was a really great piece of advice. I was so grateful, and it's been like a hit. And I made it clear in that document that like, I'm in a different time zone. Like, you don't need to respond unless I say it's urgent. So please ignore. But I found that, I would send messages at like, 4 or 5 o'clock my time, like 8 o'clock East Coast, and people were rushing to respond. And I realized, like I'm doing it. I'm doing that thing I said I wouldn't do. And, Slack has a million plugins, and like you can actually get plugins to like schedule your messages. So that's all I do now. Like anytime it's after 5 o'clock East Coast time, and I have a message to send, I schedule it. And I schedule it for the next day when I know I'll be there and be able to respond. So it's not like I send a message out into the ether. And like, it's fine. That way I can like get it done, get it off of my list, not worry about it, but not create this sense of like urgency for somebody who is in the position of feeling like they need to respond because of like my role in the organization.
Thank you for sharing that very practical example. I love it so much. I'm also so curious, what was in your about me? Like, did you share working style, preferences, values? Yeah. What was the format? Share more. I love this.
Yeah, so it was, quick bio, who I am, my family, where I live, also just my work hours. You can expect to find me online from, 8 to 5. Sometimes I'm on earlier, sometimes later, but those are my working hours. And I do close my laptop down at this time because I have dinner with my family. I need to be present. I typically don't respond to any messages on the weekend. If you need me, like, let me know. And then I also had, a whole section on communication, like easiest to reach me on Slack. Like I respond to emails within 48 hours, but like, let me know if you need it earlier. That, how I receive feedback, how I give feedback, how I want to know how you want to hear feedback, what my expectations are for, if you're a direct report. How, to feel, how I want to empower you, and like how we can find like, a common working style. What else? And just how I make decisions, like what kinds of things I need to see in order to feel confident about my decision. And I gave a couple of different examples there.
I love it. I do think so much of success is setting or back like clear expectations, not success. Yeah. You know what I mean? With regards to helping set up a team for success.
Absolutely. Well, and, I'm the only person on the West Coast. There is a headquarters in New York. And we also have a distributed team. So we have, I'd say we're like about half remote and half in person in New York at this office. And like, we just don't have time for folks to worry about like, did she mean this when she said that? Like, can I ping her about this? I don't want to upset her. Like, we just need to be level set. Like we need to be able to move as quickly as possible and not let any of the stuff get in the way, because it does.
I love it. Everybody should be taking notes, and people are going to find this when they Google you for many years, and they're like, yes, now I know her secrets. Amazing.
All my secrets.
You mentioned earlier, like a mom penalty, and I'm just curious, what can men do who are feminists and of course care about supporting their female coworkers or female identifying coworkers? Like, how would you define, first of all, the mom penalty, and how could men be allies?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I don't think it's just a male issue. I think it was just general culture. So I worked, before when my daughter was born, I worked in fashion, and it was, some men, and it was also a lot of women. And what I realized years later was there were not a lot of models of like what it meant to be a mom and an executive in any of these companies. Like it just didn't seem possible. I saw a lot of women become moms and leave the workforce. I saw like women who were divorced, like, which is cool. I got divorced. But I didn't see like a lot of models of like, oh yes, I want that. So I think it was beyond just, like a male thing. But I will say, like, I think that there are, how do I say this? The expectations for what it means to do a good job are not the same as hours put in. And I think those two things get like confused a lot. So I had very real obligations. Like I could not stay at work past a certain hour or arrive before a certain hour because my child had to be in daycare, and I had to go drop them off at daycare or pick them up at daycare. And if I, like was late for pickup, I was charged $1 a minute, or sometimes like some places they're like $20 a minute. It's nuts. And I couldn't drop off before a certain time because it wasn't open. And they do that like late charge to like make sure parents don't do the late pickup. So I often would be like rushing back and forth. And it's hard to know how much of this was like just my own insecurity, but I think this was actually real. I wouldn't get like meaningful assignments where maybe I would have like, it would require me staying late some days or doing some work on the weekend, because the expectation was like, well, she can't do that because every other day she's running home or coming at this time. But all I needed was like a little advance notice. Like, give me some advance notice and I can get a babysitter. I can talk to my partner. Like, I can figure it out. I can ask a neighbor. I have all these options. But if you ask me at 3 p.m. to stay till on the same day to stay, like, sorry, I can't do that. I have no like infrastructure here to support this. So I think, like I would recommend that colleagues, just include parents in their plans, give them some flexibility, trust them that they can actually do the job. But don't expect them to be able to drop things like the drop of a hat. I don't think that's reasonable.
Amazing. You're reminding me of one of the characters I've recently binge watched a Netflix show called Working Moms, set in Canada.
Oh.
For motherhood, and there are just obviously so many trade-offs, and last minute notice is does tie up a mother's hands.
It's brutal.
Also, you're reminding me that output does not equal hours worked. Like you can have great output. It's not about having a butt in the seat. And having come from an education background myself, I feel the same way about education. I mean, it was historically designed around Carnegie units, which were based on hours of credits of a butt being in the seat. And thankfully now more and more people are embracing mastery-based progression and other ways of showing what you've learned and mastered, skills-based, in order to get jobs. And that's why the future of education and work is so fascinating. And I'm so glad that HIVE Diversity is a part of that.
Yeah. And it is really interesting. I think work from home has been harder in a lot of respects because it can be really difficult to like shut down for the day and leave the computer and, turn it down and just walk away because it's right there. You don't have to like leave for anything. I don't know if you remember, but our colleague Carl used to say that every day he would literally shut down his computer and like put it in a drawer so he couldn't open it up. Which I thought was really funny. And like classic Carl. But in some ways, like it is nice because, so my daughter is, she's now back in school full time, but it used to be when I was working in an office, she'd go to aftercare and then I'd pick her up after aftercare because I couldn't leave, to pick her up at 3 o'clock. But now I can pick her up at 3 o'clock and then, take her home and then pick up my work again. So it does give me like a little bit more flexibility, I think. I think this idea that if I put in 50 hours a week, then I'm a really hard worker. And if you put in 40, you're not as hard of a worker. It's like, well, what did you do in that 50 hours? Like, what did you produce? Like, were you able to do these things? Because maybe you're just not efficient with your time. And I did learn how to be a lot more efficient with my time. And I became a working mom because like, I couldn't just sit until I finished a project. Like I had to get it done in a certain amount of time to get home. I had no other choice.
I remember, so I got to first meet your daughter when you would bring her into work. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I've always had, I think honestly, 90% of parenting is logistics. Like it is so complicated. Honestly, it's like, forget this, like, I need a parenting philosophy. I need whatever, like it is logistics. That is it. I run like an operations center. And so like, she goes to school like 40 minutes away from where we used to work. And it was just not possible for me to pick her up at the end of the day. And she stopped liking aftercare because she was like 9 and she was like, it's for little kids. And so there was like this company, and I'm forgetting what they're called, maybe not Kangaroo Time. It was called something else. But they used to have, it was like Uber for kids, and you could like order a driver, and all the drivers were like background checked and had experience with kids, and they would go pick up your kid from school, and then you'd like see a little dot on the app screen, like watching them travel to you. And so we would do that one day a week. She would get picked up, and then she'd meet me in the office, and she'd get to like eat the snack drawer and make art and be like generally very moody to anybody who wanted to talk to her. But then it was nice because the two of us would like walk down Market Street and like we usually would pop in a bakery and like get a little treat and then take the bus home. And it was just like nice time for the two of us. So I really liked it, even though she always complained about it all the time.
Tess, I remember you have an annual mother-daughter day. And can you tell us a little bit about that tradition?
Yeah, so it's called Girls' Day Out. And it started because when I used to work at an organization where everybody would always get like half of the first week of the year off, like just because the whole place was closed. And my daughter had school, and I really didn't want to drive her on one of those days down to school. And so I said, why don't you play hooky? We'll have a whole day in the city. That is how it started. She doesn't know that story, but that's why it started. And I also, we'd moved from a suburb to the city, and she was like 6 at the time. And when you're a little kid, like, suburbs are easier. You can like be in a car. You don't have to walk places. It's not as loud. And she was a little ambivalent about living in a city. And I wanted to show her like all the cool things that you can do in the city, like all the culture and the food. And so our first Girls' Day Out, we got our nails done. We went to high tea, and we saw a performance of Cirque du Soleil. Wow. And now that like my daughter loves ritual, like she loves, if you do it once, suddenly it's your tradition. Yeah. Okay. That's why you two get along. And so now we always get our nails done at the same place and go to high tea at the same place. And then we do like a different performance depending on, what's going on. This past year was a little bit different with COVID. But we actually had a pretty good time. We got a to-go box from our favorite high tea place. Mm-hmm. We went to Japantown and picked up a bunch of beauty products and masks and all that stuff. We took it home, and we did like a whole beauty day, the two of us. And then we ordered some dinner, and then got dressed up all fancy and live streamed a Blackpink concert. So it worked out pretty well.
I want to be invited to these hangouts. And I will say, actually, as a friend of yours that I get to see you in real life, you, and I've met your daughter, you treat her like an adult in this really beautiful way. And you're very inclusive. We've hung out, in a backyard all together with B, and we've gone camping together, and B could have come, if she wanted. And I'm just curious, can you share a little bit more about your parenting philosophy, inclusivity, kind of how much of a rope do you give her adulthood wise? How do you think about that?
Oh my gosh. It's tricky. Like I guess I finally figured out like that I found what works for me, but different things work for different people. And for me, like B and I, my daughter B, we used to just spend a lot of time together when she was young, and she was just like really fun. And I don't know, maybe because I have younger siblings, but it never made sense to like treat her like a tiny little baby. She's always been like a child, a person with agency, with like wants, with needs, with a perspective. And for me, like, and the two of us, it just really worked to, as much as I could, like empower her, I guess. And I will say, I used to have all kinds of ideas about, how kids get the way they are, and, what it means to be a parent, and, like nature versus nurture, all that stuff. And I have really learned that like kids come to you, even when they're babies, they are fully formed. Like they are who they are, really, like they are. And my job as a parent is to like, if she's like this big onion, it's to like help peel back layers so that she can be who she is, not because I want her to be a certain way or, you know, I need her to like do a certain thing or act a certain way. Like she already is that. Like she just needs some help to connect with who she is and like feel confident about that. But like, I'm not going to change any of that. And once I sort of like wrap my mind around that, like that was really helpful because, you know, then my job is not to like shape this little person. My job is to like steward them almost, you know, and like help her be who she wants to be and who like she is deep down and just needs a little like push sometimes.
I love that. And I feel like I need to write it down because I feel like sometimes I personally take things personally. I'm like, I can will my way to success. And often there will be disappointments and I'll feel like, oh, it was my fault. But actually you're like, no, I'm just alongside this child on this journey. Not, you know, it's very much play-based education as we used to care, you know so much about at our prior job in early childhood education.
Yeah. Well, and I guess it's no like surprise then that my daughter ended up at a progressive, you know, a progressive school that is child focused and like learning by doing, like really child directed. So that's been like a big part of her whole life. She's only been to this school since, you know, she was 3. I used to work there for a little bit. And I do really believe in its philosophy. I get a little frustrated sometimes when like math ends in the last month of school. I don't know, like things like that are a little frustrating. Other than that, it's like a really great place for her. And it has really worked out in a lot of ways.
One fun pandemic project I remember you did with your daughter was you did a podcast together. Can you tell us a little bit about your mother-daughter podcast?
Man, you're bringing up all the gems. I love it. So my daughter, her dad and I divorced when she was 4, and her dad and stepmom have 2 kids now, one of whom was born like week 2 or 3 of the pandemic, like really, really early on. And it was pretty scary. And you know, back then it's hard to remember, but like, we didn't really know as a society, you know, how it traveled, you know, who could get it, like what your odds were. And so their pediatrician recommended that, and B was with us at the time, that her little sister was born. And their pediatrician, you know, my ex-husband and his wife kind of said like, well, we want to have, you know, B come back to the house. She's normally like kind of week on, week off. Like, how do we do that? And the pediatrician at the time said, like, we really don't know how this affects young kids, like especially infants. And it can be tricky the first 3 months of life. So it's best if you actually keep your household static until this baby is 12 weeks old, or at least I think like 8 weeks, they said.
Yeah.
So that meant that B, who's like used to seeing her dad or stepmom, her brother, meeting her new little baby sister, couldn't go home. And it was really hard. It was like, you know, with everything else going on, like suddenly being in school, remote, and, you know, everything is like so awful. So we just tried to find like fun things to do. Like we would go on hikes every day. And my daughter like used to do this thing where she'd like get like a fuzzy little, like a pencil with like a fuzzy thing on top and like interview different people in the house. She'd like interview the cat. She'd like interview Brian, my husband. She'd, you know, interview stuffed animals and be like, and what did she say? She'd say like area woman or like word on the street. I forget. So she was like kind of into that. And somehow, I don't even remember how it started. But I know what it was. Sorry. I'm like all over the place, but she got really good at these like would you rather questions. They were really horrifying, like just the worst versions, but really funny. And we thought like, wouldn't it be funny? And my friends, I would like text them to my friends and they would say, we need more. And I said, B, we should like record this. It'd be fun to share all your bizarre would you rather questions, and then like share them out with people. And it was really fun. Like we got some random listeners. We looked at like our metrics on Anchor, which was like the tool we used to publish it. And we had people like in the Philippines listening and like, you know, across Europe. And we used to get like voice notes from this like little girl, this like 9-year-old girl in Michigan, like, you know, submitting her own jokes and like, would you rathers. And it was really fun.
Incredible project. And also B does remind me of myself because I was a kid of the 90s and Home Alone had the Talk Boy. And so I had to have a Talk Boy, and then I interviewed everybody on the Talk Boy. And I also wanted to play pranks using the Talk Boy. So
yeah,
I'm dating myself.
No, I remember that well. That was a big hit.
thank you also just for opening up so candidly about going through divorce. And after divorce, then you're also navigating being a single mom half the time. And now, you're with Brian and there's more supports. But I'm just curious, kind of any learnings or like muscles you had to develop to get through those, stages and changes, and how did it help you grow as a mom and as a human?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it was weird being a single mom. It was like, just as it was weird being like a young mom, it was also weird being like a young, single mom. And I know there's like a little bit of, not like controversy, but some people see a single mom as, only somebody who's single all the time. And I wasn't single all the time. We continue to have 50-50 custody. So I would have whole weeks or, parts of the week where I didn't have any child in my house. And then I'd have the other part of the week where I was the only adult in the house, doing it all. And it was tricky. Like, it was fun, or I guess it was, it meant that I could really parent how I wanted to parent when she was with me. It also means I didn't, couldn't control anything when she was not with me. And I think that's hard for a lot of divorced parents, because you really, and her dad is fantastic and great, and her stepmom is wonderful. But, we have like different ideas about things. Like, I have way too much candy in my house, and they don't have any in their house, and like, so stuff like that, like, it can get tricky. And again, I think like the biggest or the hardest part was just logistics, like making sure I could pick her up from school on time, dropping her off, like, what happens if she's sick? Do I stay home? And then I actually went back to graduate school while I was working full time, and she was, I was still a single mom, and that was kind of like tricky too. And again, it was like really about lining up people to help while I was in school, like figuring out how to get my study groups working around my schedule with her. And everyone was like fantastic. And I had really like a village of support around me, which made all the difference, but it was definitely tricky.
Yeah. Can you shout out a little bit? You went to Haas for your MBA, and and being an MBA is like, it's a full-time job. Like, I just remember there being classes or programming or work 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And anything you want to share just from that chapter? And you did get to mention at the beginning how you tried to thus be an advocate at Haas for getting more moms and more into the program.
Yeah. So the cool thing, the program I did was a part-time MBA, and it was generally targeted for people who are a little bit older. So, the typical MBA at Haas was like, I think around 26. And the typical like MBA that started in the part-time program was 30. So like a little more experience. And the good thing was a number of my classmates either were parents already or they became parents in the program. And so everyone like was really flexible. They totally understood like, bath time and activities and, all that stuff. And some of them, I had a friend who had twin babies like in the first year, which I can't even imagine. I don't really know how he did it, but he did. And he also commuted from LA to the program on the weekends. Yeah, it was a lot. So it was great. Like, my classmates were fantastic and had that support. But the program that I was in for the first year and a half was on Saturdays. So it was 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. It was in Berkeley. It was like an hour away. And on the weekends where I had my daughter, like at the time, my parents ended up moving here like later once I graduated or was about to graduate. And I had an older brother who I still have my older brother, but he moved about an hour and a half away from me right before I started my program. And so when I was looking at all of my options, like basically what I would do is I would look at my semester and then map out every weekend that B was with me. And so there were some weekends where I would ask, a friend if she could have a play date for the whole day, and I would like pick her up at dinner, and then I would be, on duty for a certain number of weeknights, in the following month or so. And then and I had a lot of really great friends and community members who would help with that. And then there were some nights when my daughter and I would drive up to Marin, and we would spend the night in the living room of my brother and sister-in-law. And then I'd wake up at 7, leave their house at 7:30, and B would spend the day with her cousins and my uncle. And I'd drive over to Berkeley, another hour away, do all day class, then drive back to Berkeley, get there at 7, pick up my daughter, drive home, get home at like 8 or 9, and just crash. It was a lot.
Like, you're just reminding me too of what you said at the beginning. Parenting is 90% logistics.
It's logistics. It's logistics.
So much. Well, let's talk about the other 10%, which sounds like really emotionally taxing as well. I'm just curious, how has motherhood changed you? How has motherhood shaped you? And you're 11 years in now, like you said. So it's not like it's very new and fresh for you. It's been a huge part of your identity for over a decade. But it's obviously more than 10% of parenting is the non-logistical part. But advise me, how am I going to grow and change in the weeks ahead?
Oh my goodness. You are in for a ride, lady. Can't wait for it. No, I mean, I guess, I've been thinking about this a lot because there is really a lot of information out there, or I guess more and more every day, and a lot of resources for that kind of period when women first become mothers, that I think it's called like matrescence or matrescence, like adolescence, but like as a mother. And it is really wild. Like your identity does really change. I know for me, I went through a period of mourning. Like I missed kind of my old self and, didn't know if I wanted to be just like a mom. Like I still wanted to be me. And so I really spent, I had to go through a period of really trying to reconcile this like before motherhood and like after motherhood person, and really carve out space for the things I used to love before I became a mom. And that took a little bit of time. And it also took like, having like resources and support from a partner to be able to do that. But anyway, I do think there are a number of more resources for parents of these like younger kids. And when they really do need you, right? Like you need to know how to like sleep train, how to swaddle, how to, do you pump or do you not? Like, how do you figure out like education in schools and all like daycare, all that stuff. Like there is a lot of stuff going on there. And I found there are like less resources as kids get older. Like, I would love to talk to other parents about like having a tween, dealing with just hormonal changes, understanding how to like when to step in and when to step back. Like that's been something that I really had to spend a lot of time like thinking about and learning. Because, someone told this to me ages ago when I first became a mom, like, you think you figure it out. And then the moment you figure it out, your kid changes. Like they do something new and you're like, well, okay, now I don't know anymore. Like now it's all new. And that has been my experience, like to just never really rest on my laurels, which sounds really exhausting. And it is to a degree, but knowing that I will never like quote unquote master it is freeing, because it sort of like relieves me of that, like, I got to do everything perfect, because I can't. It's impossible. Like, I know my daughter is going to need to go to therapy when she's older. Like, yeah, of course, because like we all do. Like, there was not, like, I cannot prevent that. And like, therefore, I'm just going to do like the best that I can. But it's not going to be like perfect.
There's just so much wisdom's being spouted here. Just in case anyone joined late, your whole parenting philosophy on kind of understanding that she is fully formed and it's your job to not shape her, but just be alongside the journey and help her reveal her layers. And to this kind of acceptance that there is no standard of perfection. You will never master it. You get to one stage and then you're already behind on figuring out the next stage of development. So just thank you. Thank you for naming the hard things. It's one reason I wanted to start this interview series is I feel like people don't talk about the hard things enough. Even in pregnancy, it's like there's a Facebook announcement that they're pregnant, then there's cute pictures of a baby, everyone's saying congrats, and then like you have no idea what happened in between, what happened afterwards. And a lot of this, is social media in general and the, Instagramming of life. And so for you to name the period of mourning, it's something I'm really worried about. I really like me. I want to protect my sense of self. I want to still have an independent life. And the first stage of navigating, even in getting married, was, okay, how do I coexist and build a life? It's like a merger and acquisition of two entities. Yeah. First of all, marriage. Then you add this kid. Of course, I'm worried about how the kid is going to affect the marriage, but it's just so nice to hear you say it, that also it is okay to miss some of the before. Oh, yeah. And so any advice on protecting pieces or how to think about, and again, in the early days of maternity, I'm going to be barely sleeping, but how do I try to, inch by inch, day by day, reclaim some time for me? What's possible?
Yeah, this is really tricky. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this and thinking about this space because I don't think enough attention has been paid to it. So first of all, I don't think we talk as a society about postpartum depression. And I think that actually is really, really big. A lot of people go through it. I think that I did. I didn't know there was even a word for it. But I just felt this sense of, it was just really hard. And I've had a lot of friends go through postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, all these things that, that was undiagnosed for a long time until finally they were able to speak up, or their partner noticed something and, they were able to get the help they needed from doctors and physicians. So first of all, I'm a big believer in being able to name things and having that vocabulary. I think it's really empowering to know sort of what the terms are. And for me, being able to name things has helped me understand that I'm not alone. It's not in my head. This is actually a phenomenon that other people experience. It's been, researched to some degree, it's in textbooks, etc. So first that, and I think anyone who's about to become a mom, keep your eye on that and make sure your partner knows what to look out for, because, any type of depression, it's really hard to get out of yourself. In fact, it's impossible to get out of yourself. That's the way brain chemistry works. So that's number one. Number two, I think it's really important to have the right partner. Your partner can, if you are partnered, your partner can support you and make sure that they are not falling into old gender dynamics, which are, you think that we wouldn't do that, but all of us do. We all default to what we know, what's in society, how our parents were. And it takes a lot of really conscious effort to not expect the mom to do these things and the dad to do these things if you're in a heteronormative relationship. And that can be really, really tricky. And so being able to name it and call it out and having a plan, and having not only a plan at the beginning, but a plan for checking in and addressing when things slip, because they will. The other thing is, and I experienced this, it's really weird. When you have a tiny little kid, you are, or at least I was, exhausted by them and needing breaks. But then the moment I was away from my daughter when she was little, all I wanted to do was be with her. And so, people we would have in-laws come over, or, my parents, and they'd say go out, we'll babysit, go to the movies. And all I could do was think about my daughter when I was gone, or look at pictures, and couldn't focus. And I've heard that that's actually quite normal, that happens a lot. And just knowing that it will pass, that it doesn't mean that you're a bad mom if you're simultaneously wanting to escape your child but also love it. All of this is normal. There's no way to feel, but making time to have that time on your own, or go to the movies or go for a walk, those moments are really precious. And just really having that dedicated space to do it, and a partner, if you're partnered, a partner who will support you getting that time. And if you don't have a partner, relying on friends and family, although I have to say, and I got divorced when my daughter was older, she wasn't a baby, but in some ways it really was easier when I was not partnered, because at least for me, there were some, I don't know, just gender dynamics going on that made it really difficult in some respects.
I'll also share, so I have 2 older brothers. I have 5 wonderful nieces and nephews. As an aunt, it's been really special when my brothers have given me alone time, because I do want to develop my own time with their kids. And so I just want to say, now on the flip side, where I'm going to be a mom, I'm really excited to be I want you to have solo time as aunt, as Nana, because I think it's important for their bonding as well as my sanity. On the flip side, I also know the times where I just haven't gotten, when parents want 24/7 time with the kid, then I don't get to develop my own relationship. But so I'm really excited I really want to have an annual honeymoon, for example, with my partner.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard, and parents will celebrate, first night away from the kid, or first weekend away. And those things take time. But I really hope I can be that mom that's thanks, Tess, for offering. I will accept your offer to babysit. I'm out. I'm going to the movies. I also really miss the movies, by the way.
I know, me too.
I just want to sit in the dark and eat popcorn and be entertained.
Yeah, big fountain soda.
Yeah. It's special because I do that with Netflix every night. But you want to feel
it's different. It's different. Yeah.
Oh my God.
But you should do that. All those things that you want to do it. You can do it. You just have to, build in the space to be able to do it. And if you aren't able to do it one year, like, that's okay. You pick yourself up, you do it like another time. But all that stuff is really, really important and like reconnects you to who you are as an individual and like you and your partner spending time together. Like that really is important. Like it's so crucial to be able to like spend time, you know, on your own and also with your partner. I remember reading somewhere that like the order in which we should take care of ourselves as parents and particularly moms needs to be self first, then partner, then child. But it's really in the reverse for most of us. It's child, then partner, then us. And we just can't afford to do that. It just sucks us dry.
I want to talk to Neil about that tonight. You're just like, I'm committing to it. I think we're very aligned on like, if the marriage is strong, the kids will be okay. So marriage comes first. But how can we also help each other remember to put self first, you know, when possible, by saying, Jackie, I will take the baby. You get to go shower.
Yeah.
I can't anticipate all my needs, but I'm going to practice.
Showering is going to be one of them. No, for sure. It's very hard to shower with little babies. No, but it's tricky. And I know like, it can be very easy, especially in those early days when like we're not sleeping and you know, the baby's crying, to get into this, like, you know, like, okay, I did this shift, like you do the next shift, like kind of, I don't know, like figuring out like whose turn it is next, which can be hard because I know for me, and I've talked to other women like this, like we feel like we don't deserve to like ask for more if our partner isn't taking the same amount, or I don't know, like it gets all like confusing and hard, but like we need to ask for what we need regardless of what our partner asks. Like whatever it is that we need is what we need. And it doesn't matter. Like it's not some like game of comparison. What we need is what we need. And always ask for more than you think you need, right? Because I may think that I only need time on my own, you know, every third day, but that's not true. Like if I'm home with a small child, I need time on my own every day, multiple times a day, even if there's just little pockets, because otherwise like I get lost in being a mom and like not feeling like I have an identity anymore. And that was deeply troubling for me and really difficult.
Thank you for sharing. I have been so riveted by our conversation. I've been neglecting our audience that's watching. So I just want to share comments that have come in. So first of all, from my incredible YaYa co-founder and partner, Paula, she said, thanks for sharing your journey and navigating grad school while also being a mom. We also had another Berkeley Haas alum, Ramona Moodley, say, go Bears, which I love.
Go Bears.
We've also gotten requests for where we can find this mother-daughter podcast. Is it on Anchor? How can we search for it?
So it is on Spotify. It's called Funny Questions for Funny People. But I will tell you, we have not done an episode since last July. My daughter quickly got bored of it. But I think we have maybe 4 episodes up there.
Amazing. I mean, well, it got international acclaim.
Yes.
And voice notes, as you mentioned earlier. We also have one of my mother's childhood friends, Linda, said, I am due Tuesday, and someone is impressed that I'm still asking you questions about how to retain my sense of self. But really, that is, besides pain management, because I don't love pain, and that sense of self is top of mind. Like, how is this huge change? And I love what you called it. I think the term matrescence is pretty recent. Like they were saying, hey, adolescence is a big thing. The becoming a mom is a huge thing. And you mentioned earlier, kids aren't static. You've never mastered parenting. I also, as you know, believe humans aren't static. And so even when I talk about myself, that is an evolving person. And I think one of my goals is just to stay to be non-judgmental about how I change and to be open-minded. Because even when I think about work, I think there might be a part of me that is in this tunnel for 6 weeks and then of maternity leave. And it's like, get me out of here. I miss work. I want to talk to my amazing coworkers and I want to work on the problems that we're solving. Or there's part of me that at 3 months is going to say, how could I even think about going back right now? And I don't have answers. I don't know who I'm going to be. So any advice from me on that?
Oh gosh, this is such a big question. I hear this all the time. It's whatever works for you. There is no right answer. You may be somebody who needs to go back to work right away. You may need some more time. I could see both situations, honestly. I will say if you, one thing I will caution is, and maybe this is just because I'm a working mom, but I have seen it be really difficult for moms who leave the workforce completely to get back in. Our society makes it really difficult for moms to get back in. So even if you are taking time off, which is totally cool, find something to stay involved in that can keep your resume fresh, because that way it gives you more options down the road. And so, you're not later with an older kid who really doesn't need you full time anymore and looking for something to do. That can be really painful. But I will say, give yourself space to just let yourself be. And you mentioned something earlier about wanting to be less judgmental on yourself. And I do want to say, my biggest learning in parenthood is that kids see through everything. They see you fully. They pick up all of your tics and everything. And so the best thing that you can do, the best investment you can make, is to take care of yourself. Because even if you're telling them, I love you for who you are, it doesn't matter if you, do well or not at school or whatever, if they see you being hard on yourself for not doing a good job in XYZ or, falling off your diet, they notice it and they internalize it. That's what I've noticed. And it's wild. And so it's really forced me to invest a lot of time, a lot of resources on, my own self-care, and also knowing who I am and how to address my own emotional issues, so that my daughter can see me as a healthy person who takes care of herself, and what that looks like.
We started this conversation by talking about creating better work environments for mothers. And the takeaway was it starts at the top. And I love that here we are now talking that culture of a family and how you want your child to learn and grow starts at the top with how you take care of yourself. If you want to lead by example as a mom. So whether you're a chief product officer or a mom, you happen to be both, it sounds like you have to lead by example, which I love. I also want to put a plug in for what we're building with YaYa. You mentioned how hard it is for working moms to come back to work. YaYa is a platform to connect women. And so if you go to joinyaya.com, you can download our app, connect with women like Tess as you're thinking about different career transitions. And so actually what I wanted to go ahead as we're wrapping up, Tess, you truly have navigated an amazing career with many pivots. You talked about wanting to go into fashion, and then you worked at a university doing fundraising. You've worked at an education org and done ops. You're in product. You're a C-level now in product. Any advice for moms who are trying to figure out, and working women in general, different career design and pivots? How have you thought about these bold jumps you've taken in your career? Any lessons learned that you'd like to share?
Oh my gosh, I wish I had some perfect answer for this, but I'm just somebody who's never had a 5-year plan, truly. I have just taken things as they come and just thought about what would be most exciting to do next. And do I think it would get me to where I think I might want to go after that? But that changes all the time. And so that's sort of how I've lived my life. When I thought about applying to grad school, I just knew that I thought I wanted to do something different from fundraising. I wasn't sure what. I thought an MBA could be broad enough to get me there, but I had no idea what I wanted to do with it. And I say that just because, from the outside, it looks like I had a very strategically planned career and did all these things. And that's not how I experienced it. There were lots of moments of being unsure and not knowing and trying a bunch of different things and failing and applying to a lot of jobs and not even getting interviews. And so it looks like it worked out, but it really was a lot of trial and error. I will say I've learned recently that focusing on mission has been really important for me. That's something that gives me a lot of fills me up and makes me really excited to start the day. And without that, it can be really hard. So, but that's not for everyone. But for me, I found that can be a really big driver.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending this whole hour together. We have covered so many topics, I think, both from how to be an advocate at work for women, no matter what gender you are, to the difficulties of transitioning into motherhood and feeling like you're losing your sense of self. You were just such a role model. I am so glad that you are a woman in tech. I'm just curious, have you ever had a female boss in your tech roles?
I mean, you were my boss for a hot second. Like that was at a tech company.
Yes, but in product.
Oh, no, I've never had a female boss in product. Oh, no, actually, no, I have. No, I totally take that back. I had right before I left Wonder School, the director of product there is Lauren. She's a woman. So yeah, she was my boss. Yeah,
well,
she was great.
As you enter this new chapter, you're setting the product vision for a company. How do you mentioned how important it is to have an executive sponsor, for example. Just to close, like, how do you want to be an executive sponsor for other women?
Oh, that's such a good question. I want to empower them. I want to, let them see themselves in all different kinds of scenarios. And, it's really it's not about women, I feel, or not just about women. I feel like the focus of a lot of our generation has really been about like paving the way for women, but so many Gen Zers, it's really about all these multitudes of diversity. It's about, seeing yourself as like a trans woman or a trans masculine person. It's being able to see yourself as, like Indigenous or like all these other identities that I don't think as a society, we've really thought about modeling. And I'm not part of those identities, but like, how do we make space for others so that they really can see like a full lives for themselves and participate in the workforce and society in every aspect.
Amazing. Tess Peppers, I would follow you to the ends of the earth. Thank you for joining us on Mom Salon, and best of luck in your new role.
Thank you, Jackie. It was a delight. Thank you so much for having me.